Live from the nation's capital, it's Monday, the 15th of June, the year of our Lord 2020. Gentlemen, are we having another Black Monday? After all the pressure I got from my colleagues to go to War Room or War Room 2020, no. I stood in the breach and said, it's still War Room Pandemic. We're still in a pandemic, and folks, we are roaring back in Beijing, from Beijing to Rome, and now in the United States, too. Still the first wave. First wave here, maybe second wave Rome, maybe second wave Beijing. We're going to figure all that out. Jack Maxey, Greg Mans, Raheem Kassam. We're in pandemic from our nation's capital. A very special show today. In the second hour, we're going to have conservative clergy of color again for the second special we've got. So glad I'm in studio for this one and can interface with Bishop Aubrey Shines, Reverend Derek McCoy, Francisco Vega, and Reverend M.J. Reed. This is the conservative clergy of color. They're going to actually announce today, I think officially tonight on the Lou Dobbs Show. Bishop Shines got a tremendous op-ed about systemic racism in the Democratic Party of all places. Surprise. I'm not a big systemic racism guy, but I love the fact he's taking it to the Democrats. Listen, on this, on the French Revolution, this Cultural Revolution that's going around. Remember, the Cultural Revolution from the French Revolution and from Mao and the Red Guard is now globally here as the CCP and other left-wing Marxist organizations take this from Parliament Square to Seattle, Washington, to try to suppress the freedom fighters in Hong Kong. This is a global struggle. So I want to get into all of that. We've got so much to get through today. Stats, the market, the reason I said is another Black Monday. It looked like market is cratering about the issue of where we actually stand with the pandemic. Are we opening too fast? Have other countries opened too fast? Are we doing it smartly? So we've got Dr. Fauci. We've got experts from throughout the world being cutting into their video and audio, explaining this to you. Other programming note, our own Raynor Jackson. Raynor Jackson's on Fox Business this morning. Raynor Jackson's going for his preliminary match against Roland Martin in his lead up to the title fight with Don Lemon. And Jeff Zucker, you're going to have to book Raynor Don Lemon one-on-one. He goes tonight against Roland Martin, who called him out after Raynor was in the cabinet room with the president a couple weeks ago and had the media box in there. I thought it was genius, and Raynor just threw down as he throws down the show all the time. We're going to be having them up on all of our platforms. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. Want to hear your comments, observations, also YouTube live chat. So all the platforms and all of our affiliate groups, from We Build the Wall to everything dealing with core citizens of the American Republic, everything, our National Pulse, the great folks over at National Pulse, we're going to be pushing hard the Roland Martin, Raynor Jackson, 7 o'clock tonight. We're going to also try to hopefully talk to the folks, the great folks at AVN, maybe get this up. This is going to be a big one, Roland Martin and Raynor Jackson. And here's what we're trying to do this week. We're not into white mansplaining what's going on. We're talking about the French Revolution aspect of it, Antifa, the cultural Marxism. But to really address issues of color, I think the best people to do that are people of color, right? And we've got tons of conservatives that are just never given a platform. So all week, and for the next couple of weeks, we're going to just be having folks on every day to talk to you about what they think, what their analysis shows. Remember, we want to get back to evidence-based, science-based, data-based analysis, right, of the destruction of the American family and really the destruction of African Americans in this country. Also, a couple of our viewers in the hashtag War Room, I think it's War Room Pandemic, a couple have taken offense to, I say, Mr. Floyd's life was really destroyed. It was ended when he was murdered by the police officers in Minneapolis, who will all stand trial and jury their peers. They've been indicted. In fact, one is made bail. And there's been other audio, even more disturbing audio about one of the other police officers over the weekend. But that his life was ended by the Minneapolis police. But his life was essentially destroyed by the Chinese Communist Party, right? And for those listeners that don't like me, saying this, et cetera, and they say, oh, he's a 10-time felon. I don't care. He's a 50-time felon. Nobody deserves to die like Mr. Floyd did. And if you have a problem with me talking about the CCP and what he did with his life, then, hey, it's a free country. Don't listen. Okay? Don't listen. You shouldn't be listening to the show. You're tuned to the wrong thing. This is a waste of your time. Mr. Floyd had fentanyl in his body. He had the COVID virus, the CCP virus, direct from Wuhan. He had fentanyl, the second opium war where they're destroying working class people. Jack, I think 40 or 50,000 people a year die from fentanyl, which is right from the CCP, through their partners, the drug cartels. It's the whole reason I volunteered to be the chairman of the board of We Build the Wall. And the first wall we built, the first mile, was right up a mountain in El Paso, Texas, because it was one of the number one. Border Patrol told us it was the number one embarkation point or crossing point for the cartels. And where they bring across human trafficking and fentanyl, right, and drugs. Mr. Floyd also was, it looks like somehow was passing or had in his possession a counterfeit 20. We know the CCP, they were caught with $900,000 of ones on the Canadian border back in January. They're trying to destroy. There's a huge story today, I think in the Wall Street Journal, about how the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, is trying to destroy the U.S. dollar with cryptocurrency. And in addition, they're trying to destroy it with counterfeit money right here in the United States. That was the third thing. Fourth thing was that he didn't have access to a great job because all the manufacturing jobs went away. And if certain people in the audience are uncomfortable me saying that, he's a 10-time felon, you got to talk about that. It doesn't matter if he's a 20-time felon. He didn't deserve to die like that at the hands of Minneapolis police. And in fact, we had this situation in Atlanta over the weekend, and of course the police commissioner or the head of the police resigned. And this just got back to my point. I think the president, my strongest recommendation, a presidential commission. Like you had the Warren Commission, like you had the Church Commission on the CIA. Do it, name it after Mr. Floyd, make it meaningful, have all voices in there, and get in this. Obviously, there's a training problem, a training issue, I should say. There's a training issue, maybe a recruitment issue, but all that ought to be. Look, I'm not a police expert. Nobody here is a law enforcement expert. Those kind of issues ought to be gotten. I think we ought to take positive action and actually get a commission that President Trump is the driver of the action. Remember, in dramas, the protagonist drives the action against the antagonist. Today, President Trump finally tweeted out something on Joe Biden this morning, right, to say that he's done more in 4 years than Joe Biden's done in 40 years. I think it's a great tweet. I would say next, let's back it up. Let's every day you ought to be backing it. That's a debate that the American people ought to have. This is what the conservative clergy of color is coming on here in the second hour, and they're talking about their whole push over the next couple of weeks is how the Democratic Party has let down the African American community, who basically votes for him 90% of the time. So, and you've got some of the best voices in the country. However, what we want to do is start with global anarchy and the global cultural Marxists, because this is the deep story. This is the story you got to get in back of. Just like, remember, this pandemic triggered an economic crisis, triggered a financial crisis. They have this vast geopolitical struggle. And somehow over the weekend, Raheem, I went through every news site, all Twitter, and I still have yet to see, somehow I missed, whether it's in London, whether it's in Rome, whether it's in Washington, D.C., I haven't seen the crowds gathering outside the Chinese embassies, right? In fact, the Chinese embassy, talk about information war, they're running the tables on us right now because their local consulates are showing up and saying, hey, we've got masks, all the PPE that we sucked up, when we knew this virus was going, we vacuumed it up in Europe, we vacuumed it up in the United States, Brazil, Australia. Now, exactly what they said, exactly what their plan was, to come back to local communities, Louisiana, et cetera, and say, hey, we're the good CCP. We're only here to help. And how about a mask, right, on a disease that we gave you. So, Raheem, let's go to. There's a lot of disturbing stuff coming out of England. A lot of disturbing images coming out of Seattle.
That was a full 3-pen rant, by the way.
I was Monday. I had to kind of get it. I had a lot built up.
Somebody in the YouTube live chat noting that the magazine's full this morning.
Good.
So I think that makes
hashtag war and pandemic, and also the live chat on YouTube.
We also do have to clear something up as well, because is it the Chaz anymore? I'm not sure it's the Chaz anymore. I think they're renaming it the Chop. And I'm not even being funny about this. They are renaming it the Chop, the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest. That's what they're calling it. And this makes sense now.
And why is it ironic that you say Chop? Because
here's the thing. Let's run this clip from Shelby Tulcott at the Daily Caller, who's been there, who's been at the Chop, the renamed Chop, and hear from the speakers themselves. We talked about the French Revolution last week. Let's hear from the speakers themselves exactly what they think they're doing here.
It is not Chaz, it is Chop. Chop. Has anybody here ever heard of the French Revolution before? That is another revolution, because people started putting property over lives. They started putting money over people. Does anybody here know what happened to the people who did not get on board with the French Revolution? Say it louder. Say it louder. That's the message we need to send. We are serious.
This is absolutely, look, this is what I used to tell people years ago. I said, hey, you may not like populism and nationalism. You may not like this whole worker-based reality of the Republican Party. You might not like Donald Trump, but your choice is not between the radical left and Paul Ryan. It's between the radical left and us, the populist nationalists. And this is the perfect example. They're now talking openly in Seattle about, and you hear him give them the history lesson. What's the history lesson he gave the people? He said, yeah, they had this revolution, or the French Revolution kind of back there, when they started putting property over people, right? When they started putting property over people. That's actually not technically correct, okay? The core of the French Revolution was to destroy the very heart of society, particularly the church, religious beliefs, the family. The money was always a side element until much later on. But this was always a cultural revolution, right? Not an economic revolution. It was a cultural revolution, just like here. Yes, they had in China in the 60s, just like they are kindred spirits of the French Revolution. It was all about destroying the basic structure of the Chinese traditional family. That's why it's so important. We have conservative clergy of color that is going to be that's going to be on here in the second hour talking about this, because this is a cultural revolution. It's not simply about economics. But in Seattle, ladies and gentlemen, and remember, embrace this today, chop.
And Steve, what do you think about the French Revolution?
I think that in the French Revolution, I think it's still too early to tell.
Just
Cho and Lai. I'm with Cho and Lai. Well, no, Cho and Lai is very wise. Because remember, people don't put in context. When Nixon asked that in 1972, they were still only halfway through the Cultural Revolution. Did not end until 76 when Mao died. And look at today. Today is a direct lineage to the French Revolution. He was very wise. It's too early to tell. It always comes back up and resurfaces. This is it's more than just money. It's more even than just class. It's about the traditional structure of society. That's what the French tried to break. The French radicals tried to break it. The Chinese Maoists, the Red Guard, tried to break it. They were the front guard. The Red Guard is essentially what Antifa and certain elements of Black Lives Matter are. Right, they're the Red Guard. So, and you see this in this battlefield that's a global battlefield. Do you not?
Well, also, one of the things about the French Revolution that our listeners should understand, we tend to look back on it in history and not see it really in the fearful way that it was at the time. This was the overturning of the Catholic Church, which held reign in cooperation with the Sun Kings. The kings of France were total rulers, had complete control over every destiny of every human being in France. And when they undermined this, the attempt was to destroy history. And they're doing the same exact thing today.
There were many, many positive things about the French Revolution, right? It had become too ossified. There are many positive things, but what happened is slipped into the reign of terror. Robespierre, and that's what we'll get into. We got a lot to report here. We'll take a short commercial break. We'll be back. We're in pandemic in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back to the War Room. We've got in the middle of a pandemic. Looks like the economic crisis, the financial crisis back upon us. We knew if you took your eye off the ball that it was all going to come back because it's really never left. We're going to get into all of that into today's episode, but I want to go back to Seattle. I want to walk through everything we've got with London. Let's talk about that. Then the Chinese on what's happening in Beijing, also the whole Wu Mao army, and then in particular what's happening with this pandemic. But let's go back to London.
Towards
or
the
Seattle.
end, towards the end of last week, you saw some of the impetus draining away from the Chaz. You saw when the rain came out, people abandoned the area. You saw these horrific images that I'm sure shocked Jack, our gardener, to the core, of them trying to plant plants on top of a cardboard plate, still in their planters.
Oh, that was pathetic.
You had a lot
Really
of
sad.
a lot of things draining away.
Soy boys are not farmers.
Over the course of the weekend, what you've seen is an attempt to not just rebrand from Chaz to CHOP, the Capitol Hill occupied protest, or Capitol Hill organized protest, depending on who you're talking about. You've also seen a shift, because remember, the police went in there last week, retook the precinct. You've seen a shift now for people trying to get momentum back in their favor, trying to attract more people. And it's becoming a little bit more militarized in the way they're doing this. They have been chasing people out who they think have been causing a disturbance. They have been beating. There was a Christian pastor there at the end of last week.
Okay, let me stop you there, because you got to explain this to the people. If you watch CNN, it's like a street fair.
Right.
MSNBC guy got jumped on live TV. If we haven't got that, we ought to get that clip up. The little soy boy on MSNBC is actually sitting there and he says, "Hey, it's like a street fair." And some guy walks into the shot and says, "Don't ever say that. We're not a street fair. This is a revolution, etc." But the images that MSNBC and CNN are showing, and the mayor's talking about, is that it's a street fair. It's summer of love. It's all great. And President Trump, it's not anarchy. It's not what you describe it. It's not the French Revolution. I don't think that this the French Revolution piece has gotten any play on CNN or any other places, right? About chopping heads off. And by the way, they're referring to the guillotine.
Yep.
So what's the truth? If you look out there, is it a street fair, or is it this increasingly, and the John Brown Gun Club? Are they still carrying out there open carry? Is Raz? Because I hear from some sources Raz is giving up his AK-47. Other people saying no, he's still a warlord and he's still enforcing. So what's the truth?
So the videos that I've seen of Warlord Raz seem to be Warlord Raz on a more of a diplomatic mission this weekend. He's not carrying the AK-47 around with him anymore, but he is still enforcing within the Chaz Chop. This summer of love nonsense. There might be some people.
Why is it nonsense?
Well, there might be some people in that zone who think this is all about, putting flowers in the barrel of a gun. But actually, what you're seeing is anybody who is divergent from the messaging of the people who are enforcing the CHOP. They are quickly turfed out. They are quickly manhandled. They are beaten, as we saw with the Christian preacher at the end of last week as well. And what you're also seeing, and our good friend of this show, Jack Posobiec, we couldn't announce it last week, but he actually went out there for the weekend.
He was undercover.
He's undercover, but he's been keeping me abreast of the situation on the ground over the course of the weekend. You go onto his Twitter stream, and you'll see videos of people who are being interviewed and saying, "Yeah, this is not love and hugs." People are still trying to burn property down in that area, still trying to break into places. There was this car place that was broken into over the weekend, and so the scenes that you're seeing on CNN and MSNBC simply don't chime with the reality on the ground there. Yes, again, I'm sure there are some people who go in there thinking it's going to be a nice situation, but it's not.
Well, the thing that I find most ironic in the whole thing is that here you have this entire conversation started because of police abuse of their powers. And now you have these warlords and completely non-controlled entities who are stopping people, frisking people, seeking identification, turning people away from public property if they don't like you. These are the worst abuses that we could imagine in our own police forces that have now been adopted by the people protesting those abuses.
Haven't these guys immediately, the John Brown gun clubs, the Warlord Raz, because they're not really anarchists. They say they're anarchists, but they have a self-organizing, they have a self-organizing cell that does things. They built a wall, right, and very much identified that you're in the CHOP or the Chaz area. You're on that side. We're occupying this, right, which is the whole Occupy movement. They're armed. The John Brown gun clubs, and I think people on the right or middle-class people are going, well, these Antifa guys look like the guys that came out to the rallies at Michigan, except a lot more dangerous, right? And number 3, you've got not just stop and frisk, you have stop and pat down searches. I mean, they're not letting anybody in there that's not them, it looks like, appears to come in with any type of self-defense mechanisms, correct? So they're really putting an enforcement mechanism in there that's much more draconian than the police.
Well, the anti-fascists have created their own little Gestapo inside the CHOP. And it's you can't make this stuff up. And this is actually where this is going to go if these people succeed. You think the police are bad? Wait until you have the CHOP Gestapo running.
Isn't President
streets.
Trump playing this right now by let this start to metastasize? Let people get, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to see, I know people that try to go into New Manhattan this weekend, and Fifth Avenue is completely closed. Another huge protest down there. Madison Avenue, they called it Plywood Boulevard. You can't shop. All the stores are still plywooded up. Isn't the tax revenue base going to collapse in these cities? All these progressive cities are going to have massive problems. If this is the way the Seattle mayor, who's gone out of her way to say this is a summer of love and these are just flower children and it's all peace and love, shouldn't she own it?
Yeah, this is more CHOP and less Somalia, as has been cited on Twitter. I think somebody reminding me in the live chat just now, but the juxtaposition going into the election that the president is creating, the Democrat-run cities, Democrat-run, nursing homes flooded with coronavirus patients and deaths, and the CHOP in Seattle and the CHOPs that will be founded elsewhere. You look at what the president tweeted this morning, and he's not just talking about Joe Biden and his record in 40 years in Washington, D.C. and how little he's actually achieved for black Americans. But it's the juxtaposition, right? It's between, and by the way, this is a lot of people out there saying, oh, he's just tweeting law and order. He's not doing anything. He shouldn't be doing that. What he's doing right now is he's creating a foundation of a campaign. The foundation of the campaign will be that juxtaposition between Republican cities, Republican states, law and order versus the chaos here. And I just very quickly want to take you back to London as well.
Yep.
Because the scenes from London this weekend don't flatter anybody. They don't flatter anybody in BLM. We've seen the fights break out in the BLM UK side of things, and they didn't flatter anybody on the patriotic side who were defending the Churchill statues.
The patriotic side had 150 people arrested.
I think it was 113.
113 people arrested.
113 people.
The lads started breaking heads.
Well, look, there was always going to be clashes. Look, I've worked with these people before. I know who these people are. There are certain elements of them that just go in there looking for a fight, okay? And believe me, I've stood nose to nose with some of these 6'5" former
people should understand.
squaddies.
I think people should understand when you were doing these rallies, and you were really the guy doing the biggest rallies there for Tommy Robinson and a lot of stuff with the no-go zones, etc. You used to tell me that, because I was going around Europe at the time, I was trying to get back, and you're saying, hey, the biggest problem I have sometimes is the guys coming looking for a fight.
That's right.
And they're coming looking to throw down.
And we had 20,000 people out there at certain points, and a handful of them wanted to fight.
And, of course, the media focuses right on that.
Not just the media that focuses right on that, but the police also treat them much differently from the Black Lives Matter and the left. They're much more inclined. We saw the pictures on Saturday, right, of the police in riot gear going down, but there was no police in riot gear when the BLM protesters were out smashing things up. This was something that was uniquely
when they're desecrating
applied.
Gandhi's statue, you don't see the London police in riot gear. You see them in yellow vests running away, right?
That's
letting poor Gandhi fend for himself.
That's exactly right. And whether it's in Hertfordshire now, where the local police are telling ordinary beat cops that they should be willing to take a knee if they're asked to by protesters, or whether it's in London, where Sadiq Khan not just covered the Churchill statue, by the way, let's ram this home for the American audience here, covered up the George Washington statue. There's a George Washington statue in Trafalgar Square, right next to the National Gallery. And the Washington statue, ironically, actually
it's in front of the National Gallery.
Yeah,
correct.
It sits on American soil.
Yeah.
Because George Washington didn't ever want to set foot in London.
Right.
So it sits actually on some soil that was sent over, and that was covered up as well. Now, I just have to have one conclusion on this point, and that's the Mayor of London. Because while it's not all his fault what's going on there, he is exacerbating the situation. And this Conservative Party in the UK, so-called Conservative Party, with Boris Johnson at its helm doing nothing about this, really need to take a look at what Margaret Thatcher did when the London Authority, back then, under her, took too much power. She abolished it. She got rid of the Greater London Authority. She had a parliamentary majority. It was within her capability to do so. And all of these Tory MPs who are going up to the Churchill statue and taking selfies with it and saying this is unacceptable, that's all rhetoric. It's time for some action. And the action is hashtag defund Sadiq, right? Hashtag defund the London mayor. You have the ability as legislators to get rid of Sadiq Khan and to get rid of the London mayoralty.
But where's Churchill?
They don't do it.
Where's Churchill's biographer, Boris Johnson? This is, remember, you the operant word there is Margaret Thatcher, or the operant word. She was a leader of the Tory party. You're not going to do this with backbenchers in the Tory party. You have to do it with leadership. Where's Boris Johnson over the weekend?
As you said, actually, Margaret Thatcher did this in the past, so it can be done again.
And Tony Blair brought it back in 1999, and that's how we have these terrible London mayors. Remember, Ken Livingstone was a trash communist.
Red Ken.
Boris Johnson was London mayor, a trash neoliberal mayor.
Yeah.
And Sadiq Khan is a trash Islamist mayor.
Boris Johnson, when he was mayor of London, was not the populist nationalist he became to become prime minister. Okay, we're going to hashtag War and Pandemic live chat on YouTube. At War Room 2020, at War Room Pandemic. We want to make sure you're part of this. Your voice is being heard on a global basis. We got in the second hour of this show, conservative clergy of color, so that we don't have to white-splain to you what's going on. They're going to explain it. We'll be back in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
This show was created because of uncertain times, and what we try to do every day, 6 days a week on the show, is to describe to you what's going on. We don't try to tell you, we try to show you so that you can incorporate it in your thinking, whether you're sitting on a trading desk right now, whether you're producing a TV show later in the day or online site, or whether you're a citizen of the United States or the world, to basically have a framework of which to make decisions. NetSuite by Oracle, if you're an entrepreneur, is the best tool that you can have in uncertain times. Remember, just go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, and get 7 action steps you should be taking now as an entrepreneur. NetSuite by Oracle. Remember, Oracle, the #1 platform on the cloud. NetSuite, the #1 platform for entrepreneurs, with over 20,000 entrepreneurs, companies now using it. Okay, I want to finish up here. We got to continue. I want to go back to Seattle right before we leave here. In the difference between the police chief, and I want to talk about police chief, former Commissioner Ramsey of D.C. and Philadelphia, their observations on what they think is going on in Seattle.
Well, and you're seeing this even in London with Sadiq Khan and his police force. But in Seattle, it's very stark because you've got this mayor, what's her name? Jenny Karen Durkin, right? The one who wants to roll it all over.
She's the one she's trolling President Trump every day.
Absolutely.
Summer of Love, we don't know, go down to your bunker. I mean, she's in the president's grill.
She's lost control of her city. And then you have this female African-American police chief there whose name is Carmen Best. Carmen Best is very upset that they were forced to abandon the East Precinct. She said the mayor made her do it, and she wants to take it back. She says it's time for her police force to get back and take control of the city. So what we have is the problem with this liberal mayor in conflict with her police chief, who is simply trying to do her sworn duty. It's unbelievable.
I think it was Commissioner Ramsey. I think it was on CNN the other day. It might have been MSNBC. I think it was CNN. And he was saying, hey, the mayor may be saying this is Summer of Love and this is a street festival, he says, but they have 6 blocks of, in the middle of the heart of one of the most vibrant cities in the United States. He said that's about 2 square miles.
Yeah.
Okay? And he said, hey, they may be saying part of it's a street fair today, but eventually the business community, because all those businesses are going to be collapsing, are going to say, we got to get this. Somebody's got to put order into this. He says, when you go in there, every day you don't do it, you're just delaying what's going to be not a good situation. I mean, he was shaking his head like, I can't believe they've allowed this to kind of happen. And he was backing up. He was saying that he thought the police chief out there, had done a great job. And he was the first one I heard that actually brought forward. She was directed in a direct command by the mayor to give up that precinct. And when they showed on the screen they had scratched off the police and put up the people saying Commissioner Ramsey was not digging that, right? Just like the police were. These police, and that's what I'm saying, that the police, there are problems, right? Out today, they're saying, I think it was Bobby Seale, the former, Bobby Seale's a former, I think Bobby Seale's a Black Panther, right?
Yes.
Bobby Seale, and the congressman, right? Remember, he's the guy that beat Obama in that primary years ago when they didn't think Obama had much of a future in Chicago politics. It was his office. They had the police officers thing. But he came out today on the Fraternal Order of Police, the police union. And I mean, he said, hey, the Fraternal Order of Police are equivalent to the KKK. I mean, he was not, Bobby Seale's an old firebrand, and he threw down. And I think that's what you're seeing. There's not that they're not issues. There are obviously issues. You can see in Atlanta there's issues, either recruiting, training, or what tactics are. I don't know. I'm not a police guy, and we're not here to white-splain that to you. That, to me, has got to come from some organized effort to kind of go through this, right?
One of the interesting things is 3 large California police unions. I think it was San Francisco, Los Angeles. They all got together, and they made a declaration of some things that they want to see done nationwide, end of the cardioid artery chokeholds. And they actually make a statement, which is I think, pretty rational. They say, police officers come from and reflect our communities. Unfortunately, there is racism in our communities, and that means across our country there are some racist police officers as well. Statement of fact. And they say the police unions must root out racism wherever it rears its ugly head. I think it's a positive move forward, and hopefully it leads to your idea, some sort of a national.
I think the president's got to step into this now. And Greg, the Hill has today, all the reporting is, and Langford drops his bomb. Senator Langford from Oklahoma, great guy, but he drops his bomb on CNN. He's got his own ideas of a bill. He's a Republican senator guy. Senator Scott was on the shows yesterday. I didn't think Senator Scott really outlined exactly what he's trying to accomplish as forcefully as he should have. He's another great guy. Nancy Pelosi's already got a 1,000-page bill up, but there's all kind of dissension. It seems to me that that's kind of fallen into a legislative morass. The White House has got to take. I think the one way to take leadership is not to try to force through some bill now. Just my own observation is that let's step back, have presidential authority on a major presidential commission that President Trump, and here's what I think you ought to say. I'm going to have interim reports, and I'm going to have all voices on here, right? We're going to have African-American congressmen. There's some great leaders, Clyburn and some other guys that ought to be heading this up. But get all the voices up there and get into the heart of it, of the systemic racism or not, and let's get the Fraternal Order Police in there, argue it out, do analysis, do studies, let's have it. And what I think the president will say, he said, hey, I'm going to have interim reports on 1 August. I'm going to have other interim reports, and I'm going to have a final report delivered to my desk. The first thing I'm going to do after I take my oath of office, my second term, in January 2021, I'm going to have the report delivered to my desk, and we're going to pull the trigger on the action items that you ought to do. And the president, to me, that would be bold leadership. And right now, there's so many discordant voices. And we heard Langford's thing, Greg, the other day. He was a great guy. And I mean, he's throwing up his ideas in this thing because it seems like not enough momentum's in back of this.
Yeah, exactly. And with Senator Langford's bill, the sticking point with what he was talking about with Jake Tapper on State of the Union is whether or not the chokehold component is going to be part of it. And he said it's still being drafted and wait to pass judgment whether or not that's included or not. And conversely, over in the House, Leader McCarthy is open to it and open to working with Pelosi on the chokeholds and the qualified immunity component of this.
I'd like to, on hashtag War on Pandemic right now, for people who've seen the video in Atlanta, at Lisa Pine, and it'd be about Rudy. And look, as you know, we're huge fans of Rudy. On this one, I kind of disagree that he said, hey, there's enough in that. He thinks there's enough in the video that are reasonable force. My only point, and we're not police guys, right? But I see a guy have his taser taken. You know it's a taser. The guy shoots you with the taser. You know that's not a deadly weapon. You open up. It's a question of training and a question of selection and all of that, right? But and I like the War Room hashtag pandemic crowd to jump in here. Rudy had said that he thinks there's enough evidence right now. I think what Rudy said, that it'd be a reasonable case you got to bring forward. I don't, at least from my unsophisticated, unprofessional eye looking at a very, limited videotape in a Wendy's security thing in a line, it looks like it was the police officer was definitely at fault, right? You shouldn't have
In
done
Atlanta?
it. In Atlanta.
My understanding is that if you touch a police officer in a violent way, if you're wrestling with him on the floor, you grab his taser, they have to defend themselves. They have to defend themselves, and they have to defend the public against. What's this guy going to do if he manages to tase the police officer and then remove his firearm?
Yeah, he's incapacitated. Could remove his firearm.
I think it's well within reason. This I really do. I mean, the
guess
George
you're in
Floyd thing is
you're-
completely
you're-
different.
You're in Rudy's camp.
One thing I would say is
I'm not so sure you should. This whole thing for these type of events, shooting guys when they're running away. That's what I'm saying. It's training. I'm
Right.
not a police guy. I don't know what the formal policing methodology is, but this thing right here, that's why I think a presidential commission. I don't think you're going to get this worked out at a federal level right now by passing some sort of bill and then having to have that back through the system. I think this is a time to have not to rush into something that's slapped together and negotiated. Let's step back and get into this, right? Let's step back. That's why I think a presidential commission would actually get every element of this.
two things I think are important, especially when we look at individual actions out there. We have to have trust in our institutions. We have to have trust in our jury process, because remember, that jury's not going to be made up of 12 police
We
officers.
have to have trust in
It's gonna be made
institutions.
up
I'm hearing this
of
from Jack
citizens.
Maxey. Hang on. I'm hearing this from Jack Maxey every day, giving me deep state on FBI, CIA. The Mike Flynn, how can you sit there? I hate calling out blatant hypocrisy,
Well,
but
no,
how
no,
can you sit
but-
there with the Mike Flynn thing stapled? And by the way, I'm a General Flynn guy all the way. But you can't sit there and go, we got to have faith in our
But
institutions.
let me-
I'm calling the commission I've called on for 3 years since I left the White House. It has to be another church commission about the FBI and the CIA, because those institutions have rot in them, right? On the whole concept of what they're doing for national
I do not
security.
disagree, but a trial by jury is a different thing, right? That is individual citizens being able to make up their minds based upon the evidence. But more importantly, if we have a national commission, I think
What
it's
do you
very
mean trial by jury? Are you saying that these police
if these police officers end up at trial, they're going to be
well, when you say that, but
tried by a
are
jury
you
of
saying that
citizens.
okay? But are you saying the police officers should be indicted for killing?
I'm guessing it's probably going to go that way. They're at least going to have a grand jury investigation of some sort. But more importantly, I wanted to say,
You got a quizzical look.
if
You
we
don't
ha-
think they would have a grand jury on
if
this?
we
I
if
don't
we
know about
have
that.
a national commission, one of the things that I think the American people we're going to be very surprised about is the great number of phenomenal African American police chiefs around this country.
time.
Most of these cities where we're having big problems already have in place some very qualified people. And I think that what you're going to see is, as we have this dialogue, the American people are going to be surprised to find out just how many minority people actually are in the police forces. And I think that's a positive thing. I think it leads to a good direction for us in the long run.
Can we get a poll up on I'm going to throw this out here for you right now. Hashtag War and Pandemic, and tell me, it's number one, should we have a presidential commission driven by President Trump with Pence and Barr and Clyburn and a whole raft of broad stuff? So vote one for a national commission. Vote two to have some sort of merged bill of Nancy Pelosi and Tim Scott and pass some sort of legislation out of the House. Take it that way. Number three, do nothing. Right, just let the local guys. And let's,
We'll get that up on the War and Pandemic Twitter in
you have
just
a
a moment.
quizzical look about you.
No, I just
because you're not wearing headphones.
It's because I'm reading this YouTube live chat and I'm seeing a lot of the comments about Atlanta and my look. We don't know everything about this situation, and you can't be an expert.
All I said is I'm
not attacking you.
No, but it's even
You're too
I don't know
defensive.
anything. I'm just looking at the Wendy's video.
We don't know enough about this. We've got two videos from angles of like 8 seconds each, and everybody's now claiming to be an expert. All I'm saying is, and I'm seeing a lot of comments like, oh, but why did they have to shoot him in the back? Couldn't they shoot him in the legs? Okay, you just got up off a wrestling match off the floor where somebody's running away from you in the dark, and you're going to try and... Have you ever tried to aim at a leg moving in the dark? That's a nonsense
How about this?
position
Don't
to
shoot
take.
the guy.
Well, how about this? Don't wrestle a police officer to the ground and steal his taser.
I got that, and that's I'm not defending him doing that, right? But he was also passed out in his car, right, from drinking. How many people in college haven't gone through that situation, right? Let me
just put it into context real quick.
Yeah.
The number of police officers that have been abused, assaulted, and killed in the last
agree
couple
with
of
this.
weeks.
Yes.
These cops don't know if they're the next ones.
We're the supporter of the police. I'm saying now, though, look, not just now. It's clearly, I think this needs to be reviewed. That's why I keep saying it's got to be a presidential commission. You have to have a conversation in the nation. There's not a better way to have it than that. Okay, we still got to get to the pandemic. We're going to have the conservative clergy of color in the next hour. Try to do pandemic when we come back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We live in uncertain times. You can tell that there's as much arguing in the war room between the break as there is on the show. And the reason is that these are very uncertain times. Remember, the turnaround in our company, the tip of the spear is going to be the entrepreneur. And if you're an entrepreneur, what you need right now is operating leverage. You need a tool that helps take you to the next level. That tool is NetSuite by Oracle. It's the best software package for entrepreneurs. If your company's $1 million in revenue or $100 million, you need NetSuite by Oracle. And to prove that, go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, and to get your package. The 7 action steps entrepreneurs be taking. Remember, markets are in turmoil today. The economy's uncertain. Whether we're going to have a V, a U, or what the comeback's going to be. You need NetSuite by Oracle if you're an entrepreneur, or even if you're thinking in these uncertain times about becoming an entrepreneur. So I want to thank the folks at NetSuite by Oracle. I want to go back to one thing. Look, we're the biggest defenders of the police. They have the most thankless jobs. I actually think when they say these people are peaceful protesters, the spitting on police officers, the things they're throwing at police officers, the abuse they take is unacceptable. The media has not made a big story about the opening night of the riots here. I think 60 uniformed Secret Service agents outside guarding really the south end of Lafayette before they backed them off the part right by the White House wall or fence. 60 officers were injured by projectiles that were thrown at them in a quote-unquote peaceful protest that the mainstream media said.
One of those projectiles was a brick to the head.
A brick to the head. So this is, I mean, and if you really look at the video of the abuse these people take, even before the Antifa and some of the radical elements of Black Lives Matter kick in, I mean, just what's called the peaceful protest, to me, it's unacceptable. The abuse they take, and remember, just like, and this is why we're so proud to have conservative clergy of color. If you think you've got it tough as a conservative, you don't have any idea. If you're a black conservative, the Sonny Johnsons and the Raynor Jacksons, folks, the David Webbs, they get abused. Uncle Tom, sellout, everything. If you see the way they single out these African American and minority police officers, it's amazing. In fact, Zero Hedge had a fantastic piece up over the weekend by a National Guard unit, an enlisted person in the National Guard that was in Seattle, called up, and her eyewitness account of what the police went through, and particularly the minority police officers went through in the peaceful protest, is pretty eye-opening and hair-raising. So these are, enough. You got to honor the badge.
This is Zero Hedge back on Twitter now.
Zero Hedge back on Twitter. Twitter didn't even apologize, I don't think, just put it back up there. I reached out to the guys at Zero Hedge and told them congratulations. And what did they do? Because they called out the CCP. Another thing on the CCP, Kyle Bass, who has been the leader, the hedge fund guy has been the leader of the delisting of the Chinese Communist Party companies here. Surprise, surprise, surprise. The SEC goes after Kyle on with a huge story in the Wall Street Journal they clearly worked on for months. Right, about the SEC on a deal 6 years ago. 6 years ago, they're going to investigate Kyle Bass on shorting a company, of which in the story they say he had 8 to 10 meetings with the FBI to tell him that this was a Ponzi scheme, and to go through as a Ponzi scheme. All the details of the company that was clearly is laid out as a Ponzi scheme. 6 years afterwards, they're now going to have an enforcement. They have this huge story about some enforcement thing. And look, I don't believe in conspiracies. I don't believe in the deep state. it's up in your face, okay? It's up in your grill. This is a perfect example where you see the SEC now coming after Kyle Bass. I know it's totally random that he's the Wall Street leader in delisting these Chinese companies. As soon as somebody gets out there, they're going to try to chop block you.
We haven't even got to the pandemic, to Fauci.
We've got so
Why
much.
don't we do a little roundup on the pandemic?
Real quickly,
okay,
you got
one of the
3
things
minutes
that's
to it.
very interesting, you're hearing
My guy
about
Fauci's back getting interviews again.
Fauci's back, blowing more smoke. Anyway,
But he's in London. President Trump cut him off from the U.S. He's at the Daily Telegraph.
the big story today, I think, is what's going on in Beijing, where they've shut down the city or large portions of it. And what's very interesting, as our listeners will know, the Global Times is essentially the mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party. And now what they are saying that it probably came from the seafood lab, but really what happened was that seafood from Europe...
Seafood market.
Yes, seafood from Europe contaminated with the coronavirus was sent to the Beijing seafood market and started this new infection. And they imply, this is the beautiful thing, they imply that, hey, maybe it was imported food that started it in Wuhan, too. So this is just this disastrous notion that it's always someone else's fault. This is the Communist
The reason this is
Party
big news,
in its essence.
you know when the Wuhan started, how much quarantine. They have 5 or 6, I think 6 rings of these interstate highways that loop around Beijing. They call them the ring roads. And they had intense quarantine in the middle. You couldn't get into the middle of Beijing where the leaders are during the initial outbreak in Wuhan. For them to admit they've got something in Beijing, you know it's bad, right? And the question is this still the first wave? Is this what happened when they reopened the country so quickly? What is Fauci telling us?
Well, bad news for Britons as well in this interview, alongside other people around the world. Fauci saying that they're not going to return to normalcy in terms of travel until at least the end of this year. And then a buried lead in the Telegraph interview also is about the protests. And Fauci, quote, says, the bottom line is there is a risk in protesting. And of course it's concerning. We know from the experience of all of us in the UK and here that wearing masks works. But we also know that when you congregate in crowds, that's a setup for the spread of the infection. He says, quote, I would say in a perfect world, people shouldn't congregate in a crowd and demonstrate.
Where was he a couple weeks ago? Was Fauci out banging the drum on this?
And by the way, I mean, that's in the 15th paragraph of the Telegraph article. Talk about burying the lead.
But absolutely. But was Fauci out really banging the drums on this?
Never.
No.
Mr. President, thank God you've got Fauci off the air. I mean, it's ridiculous.
In some respects, though, let's be real. If it were not for these protests, we'd all still be probably hiding in our basements right now. And to a certain extent, these protests force the issue about opening up the
law
country.
of unintended consequences. But it's also going to, if you believe the experts, it's also going to exacerbate this pandemic. Okay, we've got conservative clergy of color are going to join us. Bishop Audrey Shines and his posse. We're going to be here going through all of your questions. In fact, at hashtag War and Pandemic and in the live chat on YouTube, why don't you be giving us questions right now, inquiries that you want us to ask this new group that's officially launching today. They'll be launching, I think, tonight on Lou Dobbs at the same, right before the, right simply after the Roland Martin and Rainer Jackson